And we are back. The ongoing debate over New York's consumer-directed personal assistance program has reached a critical juncture as the state approaches a pivotal deadline. The plan would eliminate the role of over 600 fiscal intermediaries and consolidate services under a single vendor, a move facing strong opposition from industry groups and lawmakers. Here now, sharing more, we've got the New York State Senator of the 33rd District, Gustavo Rivera, and he's here joining us. Good to see you as always.
Pleasure to see you, man.
Listen, so when it comes to this, you and the governor just don't see eye to eye on this, do you?
We do not. So let's back up for a second. What we're talking about here is something that is known as CDPAP, or the Consumer Directed Assistance Program. What that means is that if somebody has a physical ailment or some sort of disability, but still has the capacity to be able to direct their own care, they can choose someone maybe in their family or somebody else, and they can actually direct that person. They say, take me out of bed, help me feed myself, et cetera, et cetera. And we have in the Medicaid program the ability to be able to pay those folks with state money. Now, it is true, and in this we do agree, partly with the governor, that the program currently as it's structured needs to be changed. It needs to be it needs to be modernized, because the problem is that the way that it's currently structured, there are way too many bad actors that are taking advantage of it. Because let's say if I'm taking care of you, right, and I have to get paid, I don't know anything about human resources, payment structures, etc. So a fiscal intermediary, or FI, are the people who actually make sure that the state dollars flow to me that's taking care of, who's taking care of you. And unfortunately, the way that that's done right now needs to be restructured. However, where we do disagree strongly is that what the governor wants to do is change the system so that instead of a bunch of them, we have one fiscal intermediary for the state. I do not believe that that is a reasonable way to do this, and I believe that the bill that I just introduced to restructure the program is much more reasonable than the government.
So let's get into it for a minute. So you have this bill that's coming up in before October here, and what's this? How do you see this playing out?
Well, the bill, the October date that you're talking about is the date to that the state is supposed to pick this fiscal intermediary, this one vendor. We're not in session right now, as you know, but what I want to do with this bill, which I just introduced in the last couple of days, is to start a conversation and hopefully to get the governor to pay attention to the fact that this is a more reasonable way to actually restructure the program. Now, they're saying that we don't, we're way too far down the road. We have an ability, we can't change this right now. I will remind everyone that just a few months ago, the governor, at the very last minute, changed everything related to congestion pricing. We can have that conversation. I thought that was the wrong way to go, but the notion that she can't actually change this when we are just less than a month away from them choosing an actual fiscal intermediary, I think that's not a serious consideration. Right. This is a more reasonable way to go about it, to change from what are hundreds of fiscal intermediaries, which again, we need to change. Right. But we can't do it just by switching to one. Among other things, fiscal intermediaries need to have cultural competency, geographic competency, linguistic competency. This is the reality. We have a big state. Having one fiscal intermediary is not the way to go.
So what is the impact, per se, on public health here?
The impact on public health, when you have, what this program does is it keeps people out of hospitals, it keeps people out of nursing homes. If you remove the program, then you have potentially people, hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers who all of a sudden might not be able to, the program structure might actually leave them behind, because the shift from the hundreds of fiscal intermediaries to the one, it might be way too disruptive. There's no clarity about how this is actually going to happen, and in such a short period of time, because supposedly it's supposed to happen between October of this year and May of next year. I don't think that that's a realistic timeline. The way that my bill works is it sets a timeline for an additional year to allow for a transition to occur and for a licensing process to happen, to weed out the bad actors and to make sure that the good actors can continue to operate. That is a more reasonable way to do it. To do what the way that I've been talking about this is not what the governor is suggesting, is not throwing out the baby with the bathwater. It's leaving the baby in the bathwater and electrifying the little tyke. We don't want to do that. We have a more reasonable way to do this. This bill would provide licensing, would provide a structure for the controller to be able to do to be able to look into the finances of the fiscal intermediaries to make sure that bad actors are weeded out. There's all sorts of things that are built into the bill so that the bad actors that we want to keep out of this business, we make sure to keep out.
Share with me a little bit about the role of overdose prevention centers. and how you see this playing out.
So overdose prevention centers are what that means. There are 2 of them that are operating in the city of New York right now. This is a modality of harm reduction that has occurred across the world for over 30 years. This is what happens. We have an overdose crisis right now. We have people who are dying from the use of opioids. We have people dying in our streets, dying in their homes. What an overdose prevention center would do, and again, there are 2 places that are operating in the city of New York right now that do this, is that someone would come to a place to use drugs under medical supervision. Now, people might be like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? Well, the option is what we have right now, which is people using publicly, people using in front of children, people overdosing and dying in the streets. As opposed to that, these 2 centers that have been operational, just 2 of them, in the last 2.5 years that they've been operational, almost 1,600 individuals have overdosed in those facilities, and not a single one of them has died. Because the overdoses are managed, most of them with, not even with naloxone. In most instances, most of these overdoses are managed with just oxygen and taking care of the person. So it is a way to do this. Now, the thing is, this is something that I believe needs to be done at the state level, to be allowed to happen at the state level. It doesn't mean that they'll pop up everywhere, but it means that programs that are already operating, that are harm reduction programs, can actually, as I see it, graduate to this next level of care. And again, this is an option to make sure that people stay alive so that they can seek treatment, so that they can get off of drugs, so that they can stay, if they stay alive. People cannot recover if they're not alive. So instead of continuing down the path of criminalizing people who use drugs, that doesn't solve anything. If arresting people who use drugs actually solved anything, we would have solved overdoses and addiction so far, and that doesn't work.
And what you found out so far, talking about Narcan in the overdose situation, is a lot being used there, or is there?
Narcan or naloxone, right? It's basically a way to when someone is having an overdose to revert that overdose. But what I'm saying is that in these centers, this is actually barely used because it's not necessary. What happens when you're overdosing on an opioid is that your body is not processing oxygen.
Right.
So what the naloxone does is it actually tells the body to start doing it again, to reconnect the word. There's a word that I'm blanking on right now, but the point is that it tells your body to start breathing again. But when you can actually put oxygen on someone without providing naloxone, if you put oxygen on someone, you make sure to talk to them. Are you okay? What's going on? You can actually manage this in a lot better way. And again, as I said, most of the overdoses that have occurred there, they're managed without any type of drugs. They're just managed with oxygen, and not a single person has died. And that's the thing that we have to rely. That's the thing that we have to really focus on. The reality is that way too many people, and these are our neighbors, these are our family members, who are dying in the streets, in bathrooms, in restaurants, and underneath staircases, in subway stations, etc. As opposed to that, let's actually get folks who are people who use drugs, or people first. Let's treat them as people who use drugs with dignity, and let's actually get them to an opportunity where they can seek treatment. And overdose prevention centers are a way to do that, and I'm seeking support to bring them here to the Bronx.
Okay. I got to be a good journalist now, because normally on the show we do follow the heavy news, but the heavy news of the day, of course, is taking a look back at yesterday, and taking a look back at where we were in terms of the presidential debate. Yeah, I knew I'd get it. I knew I'd get a rise out of you.
Did you know? It's like, listen, I'm just like, what we saw yesterday was, I mean, it would be funny if it wasn't so damn scary. We have somebody who's seeking the presidency, who, in all honesty, tried to tell us that people are eating their dogs in Ohio, or that transgender illegal aliens are getting transgender operations in prison. It sounds like he was doing a drinking game, and he was trying to get everybody to hit all the bingos in one place. This was a deranged man who has we're talking about Trump, no capacity to actually govern, as opposed to what Kamala was doing last night. She was saying to people, notice what he's doing. He's talking about himself. I am talking about you. And that ultimately is what this election is going to be about. Who has the opportunity, who has the plan, or the series of plans, to actually deal with the issues of the American people? And I believe that Kamala is the person to do that. Do I agree with everything that she's done in her career? No. But does she have the capacity to lead? Yes. Does she understand what it takes to actually make sure that Americans are safe? Yes. Does she actually understand the plight of the normal American? Yes. That is not something you can say for that other deranged man across the way, who again was just, if you listen to the questions that were being asked, he was being asked about the economy, he was being asked about abortion, he was being asked about about foreign policy, and all he could do was gripe and whine and be weird. Wasn't he just freaking weird? I mean, he was talking about eating dogs. How weird is that?
I have to be objective.
You have to be objective?
Yeah,
well, I think that's an objective fact.
No,
when
really,
you're talking about a story about eating dogs, which was, I mean, it's ridiculous to begin with, but that is just weird that they're lingering on that. Let's talk about dog eating. What are you talking about?
Let me ask you this question on a more serious note here too.
Oh, I'm dead serious.
No, I know you're. I know you're serious. I'm serious too on this one here. Democrats, in order to win, you gotta have more than an anti-Trump message. Did that message get out yesterday?
Absolutely, but that's what I'm saying. It's like what she was doing last night, and this is what we have to do every single day as Democrats, and I hope in the next 55 days that everybody knocking on doors, everybody talking to somebody on the phone, and every single elected official who is campaigning on behalf of the president or of themselves, do that, to talk to them, to talk to people about what their issues are, meaning constituents, the people who we're trying to represent, what are we trying to do to change their lives? Last night, Kamala consistently talked about the plans that she had for the American people. She talked about tax breaks for working class families. She talked about foreign policy and how to keep people safe. She talked about energy policy, et cetera. She talked about what are we going to do for you? What are the plans that we have for you to change your lives and to make them better? He did nothing but talk about himself. So she had to be able to push back on him a little bit, but if you noticed, again, what she did was just try to push, besides the nonsense and the craziness, which there was plenty of, she tried to push that to the side, and she was successful. She pushed that to the side and then spoke directly to the camera, which she rarely did. He was talking about, he was looking at the moderators whining about why, oh, my crowd size is so huge, it's so huge. And she was like, yeah, no, let's talk about tax policy. Let's talk about working class people, just directly looking at the camera and saying, these are the plans that we have to change the American people's lives. And that's what I think we need to do in the next 55 days, because you're absolutely right. It can't just be an anti-Trump message. It has to be a pro-American people message, and that's what Kamala did last night.
Yeah, we'll take a look and see how it goes. November's around the corner. Got to bring you back. State Senator.
Looking forward
Good
to
see
seeing
you
you
again.
Absolutely, brother.
Gustavo Rivera, State Senator, 33rd Senatorial District. Listen now, if you want more information, follow him on Instagram at NY Senator Rivera. We encourage you to don't go anywhere. We got more open coming up right after this.